Welcome to the Kolbecast, episode 319. Thank you for joining us. Today, Kolbe advisors Rylan Buchanan and Sarah Howard join the Kolbecast to offer some tips and advice on homeschooling. They also remind us of how Kolbe's family advisors can help our parents effectively navigate their homeschooling journey. As Sarah points out, homeschooling can be a little like making a tapestry. When you're in the thick of it, you can see the knots and it can look messy, but when you turn it around, you can see the beautiful work that has been done. Advisors like Rylan and Sarah help our families with that homeschooling work, but can also encourage us to see the beautiful progress when we're in the thick of it. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Doing well. It's a gloomy day in Arkansas today, which is nice because we haven't had much rain over the course of the year. And so it's nice when we get a cool, drizzly day, but it makes me kind of want to just take a nap and instead of really doing much else. But
yes, and it's at that time of the afternoon, also the kind of siesta time. But we're going to have a fun conversation instead, so that will kind of energize us. We have started a series with our family advisors covering all sorts of ground, ranging from the earliest days of homeschooling through the day-to-day to the long view. Today, we'll be discussing how advisors and parents can collaborate effectively in the endeavor of homeschooling. Back with us is Rylan Buchanan, and joining us for the first time is Sarah Howard, both of whom are Kolbe Academy family advisors. Hello to you both.
Bonnie, thanks for having us.
Hello.
Good to have you all back. Good to meet you, Sarah. We're going to get to know Sarah here in a second. I'm going to catch up with Rylan first. We first met Rylan in episode 232, which would be a great one to listen or re-listen to after this episode. So Rylan, how have you been?
Good. It's been a minute. So we moved recently since we last were on here. We're in the same town, across town though. So our family's settling into our new place. We're settling into actually homeschooling somewhere other than the kitchen table, which is really exciting. We have the space for it. We're all doing really well. We're in the opposite, Stephen. We got sun today for the first time in a long time. We've been living in the gloom. So it's actually hard to come inside for a minute.
Nice. And remind us also, tell us a bit about your family and your Kolbe connection.
Yeah, so I've been with Kolbe going on 6 years as an advisor. I actually graduated from the day school in Napa. And so that's kind of where my initial connection came from. Everett Byarski was actually my volleyball coach. Like, it goes so far back. And so that's where I ended up here. And then my family, I have 3 littles, 6 to 2. So we are very much in the beginning stages of our own homeschooling journey. But I did personally homeschool up to 7th grade. And so I also just have like personal experience being one of the students in that world.
So all sorts of ways you can relate to the Kolbe families that you serve.
Absolutely.
Sarah, this is your Kolbecast debut, so yay, it's good to have you here. Would you tell us a bit about yourself and your background and your Kolbe connection and all that sort of good stuff?
Well, I found Kolbe because my sister was working with Kolbe in the grading department, and she ranted and raved and loved the whole company. She said they're legitimately Catholic, they're legitimately classical, they just have so much good going for them. And so I was impressed. And so that was my initial Kolbe connection. I had never heard of Kolbe before. I wasn't raised Catholic. And so coming into the Catholic world was a little bit different because I knew everybody and everything in my previous world, but then it's a totally different ballgame once you become Catholic. So it's a lovely thing. I've been essentially Catholic for about 15 years and technically Catholic for about 5. So
Okay.
it was a lovely transition, all said and done. But that being said, I was homeschooled, but it wasn't a Catholic homeschool, but it was a classical. So I was blessed to have wonderful parents who were just widely read and had books galore everywhere. I had wild places to run in all growing up. There were always creeks, there were always wood piles, there were always forts and bakeries and all sorts of things going on. So it was a very much hands-on, learn as you go lots of different curriculums floating around the house. If something didn't work, my mom was very good about finding something that did and becoming adaptable, which has served me very, very well. Because not every student's going to learn the same way. Every student's going to have their quirks. Every student's going to have their subjects that just don't jive. So I have really loved Kolbe for understanding that, and I've loved working here. It's been a great fit for me.
Beautiful. Love that. Okay, so to get us going on this collaborative discussion and the collaboration between advisors and parents, let's consider, and maybe a revisit, maybe for the first time, the niftiness that is the Kolbe Academy Family Advisor. Each enrolled student is assigned a family advisor, and if there are multiple children in a family enrolled with Kolbe, that advisor will take care of everyone in the family. The advisor helps parent educators sort through enrollment options and make course selections and set customized goals. Advisors also give guidance on college and career planning and serve as bridges, connecting families with additional resources within Kolbe, such as the Student Services Program. And I'll link a couple of Kolbecast episodes about the Student Services Program in our show notes. So these two ladies serve as family advisors, and it's a very much a collaborative process, as I keep saying. So on that note, where's your good starting point for talking about this collaboration between parents and advisors?
Yeah, the first starting point is, are you new to homeschooling? And this is the new journey, or have you been in homeschooling and you've needed to pivot and you've found your way to Kolbe, and what was that pivot for, and why did you need it, and how can we help? And so Sarah had mentioned this somewhere in notes, and it's that idea of starting with, what are the goals? What are the goals of not just why you're at Kolbe, but what are the goals within your home? And what curriculum needs to be in place to support that? What resources need to be in place to support that? And then also having the conversation, I always like to hear families, what's your goal by the end of this year? And then what's the bigger goal? Like when they graduate, what do you hope to hear from them? And so that's where we always start. And then from there, we get down in that smaller nitty gritty. Now, how do we reach the small attainable 1-year goal? How do we reach that maybe middle school goal or high school goal? I have a lot of families who I've worked with that were younger, and they come in and say, we're here until high school because we have a Chesterton high school, but we want every step that we're doing to help support that transition in high school. Fantastic. That's so helpful. Let's pick classes then that are going to support that. Or troubleshoot. The other one is, we know that we have to get through this subject and it's so hard. You have to get through math to graduate, period. It's really hard. Okay, again, 1 year, what do we need in place? Ultimate goal, we got to get through high school math. How are we going to do that?
Okay. Sarah, how do you like to get started on the collaboration discussion?
The goals are a good thing. That's been something that has come up over and over for advising, is ask them what their goals are, because everybody's going to have a different goal. And sometimes these kids are very creative. Sometimes I'm kind of shocked at the goals. We want to become a professional XYZ. And it's like, wow, I've never even heard of that. That's very ambitious or very specific. And so finding the goal for the family is very interesting. And also starting out with a collaboration, one, have they ever homeschooled before? And two, are they familiar at all with classical education? Because that is a very different switch. And what I found a lot of the time is sometimes jokingly, I'll tell people that I teach parents, because it's not like I'm a teacher of parents, but it's like we all learn together. We all learn classically. And if you're just not familiar at all with that world, it's very attractive, but it's unknown. And so finding different ways to approach classes, or the reasons why that specific material is chosen, the reasons why the progression is the way that it is to meet the goals that the student is coming to. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it's necessary, but maybe it would benefit you in the long run for these reasons. Have you thought of that? So a conversation with the goals and with the curriculum, I found is a good duo.
Has to be somewhat interesting, because just in my conversations with Kolbe parents, they're from all sorts of different backgrounds and experiences. People, it's like, oh, we've been homeschooling, and I was homeschooled myself too. I was just talking to one of our Kolbe families where the parents are both from Singapore, living in the States now, and they were like, no clue what the U.S. education system is like, so everything is brand new. So just wide variety of experiences coming in.
Fascinating. And also the way you're able to rise to that in all the various circumstances, it's pretty impressive. So, Rylan, you have a note here about no detail being too small. Say a bit about that.
Yes. So in that, what are our goals? What are we doing? We only know what we're told. So we only know what we know. And we don't have the ability to read in between lines. So tell your advisor everything that might influence school, even if you don't think it does. Some of the conversations that I've had, and it's just like, this is a lot of younger kids. We're really struggling with getting through our day. I feel like we're at the school table all day long. And it's like, okay, well, is it the subject that's hard? Is it the way that we're approaching it's hard? We'll go through a whole lot of troubleshoots. And I'll have to sometimes back up and ask the question, well, what time did you start your school day? Well, we didn't start till 11. Okay. I could tell you for pretty decently fact that small kids by 11 o'clock, they're close to being done. I don't know about your guys' homes. Mine wakes up at 6:30. They are ready for breakfast at 7 and school by 7:30. I'm not ready for school at 7:30, but they are. And so those little details matter. What time is your family getting up and rolling? What time are you guys doing breakfast at? What's the expectations of the home that is set? What's going on at the end of the day? I've had conversations with families that they're like, we don't have enough time today. There's just not enough time. We can't get through it. And I can sit there and I always start with this, the curriculum, is it the subject, is it the student? And I more and more often now start with what's going on in your day that needs to bring it to a halt. Well, we have our extracurriculars starting at 3, which means we need to leave our house at 2:30, which means I need to be getting ready at 2 o'clock. That changes a lot. If you didn't start your school till 11 and you have to be done by 2, that school's going to feel like a lot for 5 kids, right? So give us all those little details and don't think that anything is irrelevant, because a lot of stuff will play into it. Where are they doing school? My favorite is when I find out they have little siblings. We have a really hard time focusing, and halfway through the conversation, they'll say, sorry, my 2-year-old just walked in the room. Where is your 2-year-old? Well, your 7-year-old's trying to do math. Oh, he's at the table with him. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what to do with the 2-year-old while your, first and second graders trying to do math. So those are they matter, and they're really helpful to hear upfront versus at the end of a conversation where you're like, scratch everything that I just said, because we were missing some key factors in there. We got to go back and start again.
Thinking about how even just that family dynamic and what the day looks like can be so varied from family to family, or even like in our family, it changed dramatically over the years. I mean, it used to be everybody up, go to mass, come back, get breakfast, get started on the day. And then we moved, there just wasn't daily mass. And so then it's kind of like, okay, and my kids got older too, which changes things. So then it's like, okay, you take care of your breakfast and get these. And, it's just, so that's an important factor in trying to plan things out and make things successful.
That's definitely a reoccurring conversation. That's one that you don't have one time and then like, all right, I got all your notes. I mean, that is when I do fall check-ins. What's new this year? Like, what should we be taking into consideration as the year is starting, or in the spring? What do you know is coming up next year that's going to influence? Well, we're pregnant. We're going to have a baby in August. That is heavily going to influence the beginning of your school year. Fantastic. Let's chat about it. So that's a reoccurring conversation. And I like to keep all those little notes. I keep them for all my families. They might seem small, but I keep them because they're going to influence if an issue comes up or what comes next. Especially as you head into 6th grade, what course format should we be using? What little details are going on? That's, what are you going to need support in? That's going to influence what formats we should be picking.
Yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
I think just to reiterate it, that life is life and it's going to happen. And sometimes there's a student not doing really well in a class, and then you find out mom just had a baby and that baby was in the NICU for 5 months and they were there the whole time. And so I'm really feeling behind in reading for my 2nd grader. Well, there's a reason for that. So you're doing what you can with your domestic church at the time you have with the skills you are given. And kids are resilient. They will pick it back up. It's just figuring out a path forward. Too often, I think parents are just, something happens that is completely normal for life, even if it's abnormal for life. And it seems like it's just the end of the road. I failed my kids' education. They're never going to learn. They're never going to catch up. It's just such a huge thing. And it's not. It may seem like it. There's always a road forward. Like I said, kids are so creative. They're so brilliant, which is part of the beauty of the classical education, part of the beauty of homeschooling is to give them that space and that freedom and that air in their brains that they can do it. And then once they have that, they take a little nugget of info, they just expands. So the little details of what's going on in life, half the time I feel like it's a conversation with mom where you're laying things out. And just sometimes these moms, they are just beautiful people and they just end up in tears and they're going, I'm so sorry. And I'm going, you don't have to apologize. Sometimes I'm in tears with them and they're going, this is what's going on. I'm so overwhelmed. And you just have to sounding board across, because I don't have every answer, but there's a whole panel of advisors I could ask if I don't know. And so it's just beautiful to be able to see people's steps forward and how they want to do the best for their child and how those children are just going to pick it up. Everybody's got the grace that is required for the step that they're in.
One of the unique things with homeschooling, right? In a brick and mortar school where you're going through, it's like you've got to get the kid to a certain point so he can move to the next grade level, and you're teaching a dozen kids or more, and so you've got to try to have everybody kind of tightly put together. But at least with all of my children, they're kind of, each one is different and they're all over the place at times. Sometimes they love math. Sometimes they hate math. Sometimes they don't really read well. And other times they're reading everything. So it's so unique. And I think it's sometimes hard for at least people like me who came from a public school, to see things in a different light, because we have kind of ideas of what we think. Well, you go to school, you spend so much time in school, and then you do your homework and you're told exactly what to do. And it's like, well, you can throw all that out the window now. Basically, it's a completely new model.
You have to retrain the brain as a parent. If you are a parent that has never had the opportunity to homeschool before or never seen that world, and you are coming from a public school system, you really do have to take a step back and retrain your brain that you don't have to get through every single item in the course plan that's listed. You don't have to do school starts August 1st and ends June 15th, that point period. There's stipulations in there. hslda.org, great place. Go check out your state laws. Let those be a guidance for you. Bring those pieces of guidance to us, but to retrain your brain that you are not going to get through that whole curriculum. You aren't. 8 hours in a day. One of my favorite conversations actually is to say, take 8 hours in a kid's school day and let's break it down. How much are they actually doing school? If you think about it, 8 hours in a school day, 1 hour for lunches, 1 hour for transitions, you're down to 6. You're doing 1 hour of basically redirecting, right? Let's redirect the classroom. You're going to do 1 hour of, we're in class, but we're not actually talking about the topic. Now you're down to 4. You're down to 4 hours of real schooling. And like Stephen just said, with a group of students. So what happens when it's only 1? Well, they don't need 4 hours. That would normally take 30 kids to get to that materials. So you really have to retrain and go, what's realistic for what this one student needs in this one area of work. Now, when you're home, I know, Stephen, like you have a whole school table full of kids. But each of those are in their own track. Like you still aren't grouping them together. And so I love having that conversation with parents. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay for it to almost feel too easy some days because you got it done in 2 hours. Fantastic. They got what they needed. And now the beauty of homeschool is, what else do you want to go do with your kids? What else do you need to do in the home? Right? Some days mom needs to do laundry. It has to happen. Fantastic. Reading, writing, make it happen, and then go do your laundry. It's okay if the day felt easy. So it's always just fun to teach that, reteach. And I will say, I think I came in 2020 when COVID first started. And over the years, there has been a massive influx of families who are like, I've never done it, but I really want to try. And I need to have more than someone telling me how to do it. But what's funny then, as soon as they're in the opportunity to have the power to make decisions, they're like, tell me how to do it. Black and white. What am I doing? And we're like, that it's all gray. Welcome. It's all gray. What do we need to do? So it's just such a fun, enlightening conversation. And I've had families that I've now been their advisor for going on anywhere 4, 5, 6 years. And it's been so fun to watch them grow as students, as parents, like that homeschool, just to see them go from tell me what to do, exactly how to do it, and it must be black and white, to they are different people now. And it's so wonderful. They're like, this isn't working and that isn't working, and we need to adjust, and we want to try something else. And also my school day is only 2 hours because I have things to do, or we're going to go on an adventure. And I'm like, that's so fun. I love it. Like, good job. Way to take that leap. It's hard because society does not teach us to do that.
I had a mom come in and she said she was brand new to homeschooling, and she said, I have a second and a third grade boy, and we finished everything, but we're only this many hours in. We're only 3 hours in. What do I fill the rest with? And I said, you don't. They go out, they play, they build, they fall off things, they get in trouble. They do all these things that our boys are supposed to do. What happens if I stack this many things on top of each other? And they go out and they build, they create, they get exploratory, in the area that they have to go outside. And so I think there's so much room to learn outside of scholastics. And this is something I try to tell families all the time, that scholastics are very important. We check those off. Those are the foundational building blocks that we use to learn all the rest of our lives, because they kind of are the keys that unlock the boxes. But education is so much bigger than scholastics. And you need scholastics, but education is so much more. And half of homeschooling, more than half of homeschooling, I would say, is learning how to be human and learning what it means to be a human being. How come I feel this way? Who am I? I remember asking my mom that when I was 12 or 13. She goes, well, that's the question, isn't it? Socrates asked too. So you've got to just give students the room to learn. And if they're interested in something I loved, I praised Kolbe when I first started here, and somebody said this. They said, the curriculum will wait, your child's creativity will not. And that is so important, especially when some parents learn, that it only takes a certain amount of time to get through some of these school subjects, and then they have all this free time. Well, now they get to go and they're continuing to learn. It might feel like it's play, but that's okay because they're passionate about it. And I think it was Father Gregory Pine. He said, if you're trying to look for your vocation, start with what you love, because God gave it to you for a reason. So outside of just getting the scholastics done, if it does seem too easy, fantastic, that's a gift. Go and explore what it is that your children love, help them to do that, because that's all part of learning too.
Love that, because that's it, helping to the balance both is good, just like you're saying, and all across the board, but it keeps that wonder alive too. So even then, by the time they get to the Kolbe High School program, where they're reading things that are like my freshman year of college each year when they're in ninth grade, hopefully by that point, then they've certainly, we hope they've had that wonder, and they know how to just kind of, it reminds me more of college by the time a Kolbe student gets up to high school, where you're spending a lot of time reading, you're spending a lot of writing papers, but you're not being told every second of the day what you have to be doing. By that point, ideally, you're kind of self-moving and self-interested as well. It's like, oh, good, I get to read some of the greatest books in the history of the world. I should be excited about this, even though it might not be easy.
Sarah, did you say all that you wanted to, at least for the time being, on creative ways to learn, especially for younger kids?
Yeah, this was something I really love the K through 5 grades here. Not that I don't love the older ones, but there's just something particular about the younger grades and the formation of wonder, like Stephen was just saying. But something that I learned as a homeschool student that my mom just excelled at, that I've just been so grateful my whole life, is different ways to learn. So we learned all of the Greek mythology. We would learn all of those things, but then at the end we would do fun things like make a whole Greek dinner, and we would learn where the foods came from and how they were processed. And we made baklava, which took forever, but it was so tasty. We'd get the grape leaves. We would get cardboard boxes out in the backyard, and we would make Columbus's ships, and we would sail them across the yard. And then my mom would read to us about these stories. We would get big slabs of cardboard. We would make the American flag. We would hear about American history. We would go and, any sort of history. My mom got hieroglyphic stamp sets, and we would write notes to each other in Egyptian, hieroglyphs. And my brother got a brilliant idea one time when we were passing notes in church, and my dad caught one. He said, we should really learn Dwarvish runes from the Lord of the Rings. And so we did. And so there are different creative ways. And I said, this is my dad's fault. He read us the Lord of the Rings. This was his fault that we did this. But you find different fun, creative ways to kind of bring these stories and this history off the page and what was that actually like. There was a mom that I knew, and she was pregnant around Christmas time, and it was so fun to see her explain to the younger kids, this is what Mary would have looked like. And it brings it to life for them. Or my sister was teaching high school and the kids were getting unruly, like they're 15-year-old boys, they don't want to be in there. And so she told them, all right, if you finish what you're supposed to be doing, we're going to go to the gym and you can chariot race with the office chairs. And they were all excited, and so they made chariots with office chairs and they raced them across the gym. So there are lots of different ways, even very practical home economics, baking, building in the backyard, very practical ways to build things. I think we built aqueducts at one time out of toilet paper tubes. There are fun ways, and kids are so, wow, let's do it, and so you can just find a myriad of different ways to pull subjects, to cause them to interlock, theology and history and literature. I've always said that there is a braid between history, literature, and theater that is very hard to break. Once you can weave those all together, it clicks into place. So to bring some of those things off the page and learn practically, I think is a really valuable skill, especially in those earlier years. And then you can bring that into later years as well.
As you were talking, I was getting excited because it reminded me of a side effect that happens when you're spending time at home with your family as well. Because one of my favorite experiences, I'll see my two youngest head down to the pond that's just off our property every day, and they'll just walk back and forth looking at the turtles and snakes and birds and chatting away for like an hour. And I'm like, how beautiful is this? I've got my two boys are forging a friendship together that's going to, even beyond being brothers, that's going to last for the rest of their life. And this is the way things are supposed to be. But, when you're off, at school, everybody's in their own grade and you've got friends, and it makes it harder to kind of have those great experiences of sailing ships across the backyard, or whatever, with your siblings. That's
just a little tag on to that. I've often found this to be very sweet. That my 2-year-old nephew is one of those kids where it's just energy all the time. And I know 2-year-olds are generally like this, but some more than others. But he will settle himself for 30 to 40 minutes, sometimes in the middle of the day, and he will just look out the window and he'll watch the leaves fall. And I've noticed the baby does it, the 1-year-old does it, and I call it baby contemplation time because we all need it. We all need it. And even the littles will just sit there and he'll just watch the world go by for a good half an hour, just quiet. And sometimes it's tempting to see, I'm sure busy moms sometimes are like, oh, good, he's quiet, but sometimes it's tempting to say, we're not doing anything. Let's go and do something. But it's really important to have baby contemplation time because I don't know what he's thinking about, but he's thinking about something. And you see him after 40 minutes, okay, and then he'll get up and he'll go do something else. But it's so important to have that moment.
One of the ways you mentioned, Sarah, that the advisors and parents collaborate, or advisors can serve as sounding boards. So this has come up already, I think, in the conversation. But I want to make sure you say what you wanted to be able to say. How does the advisor serve as the sounding board?
Just having somebody else to talk to, I think, is valuable. I'm one of those people that I just sometimes will call a friend or a family member and I just need to talk at them for a minute. And then the answer becomes apparent just by virtue of laying it all out with somebody else listening. And if somebody else can contribute a thought, fantastic. And sometimes there's really just something that it seems like the end of the world, but I've had other families do it. And so here's a solution. Did you ever think of that? And it's so simple. But it's being a community in that sort of thing. And sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you for that minute. Sometimes everything that could have possibly gone wrong went wrong, and then somebody dropped a bowl. So it's just the last straw, but sometimes it's not the last straw. You just have to have a community to say, am I right? Am I on the right track? Or is there some other better way that we could be doing this? Is there anything else I need to be doing to finish up this year of Kolbe? So I think just having a community, we were never meant to be alone. We're supposed to be a community sort of people. So having a resource like that is very helpful.
I can attest to that. My advisor has served as that many a time. So I'm grateful for that. All right, well, let's talk about some common conversations y'all have as advisors with your families that you take care of and how you like to handle them. Rylan, what's one that comes to mind first?
Comes to mind first. I have a few most common. I
Sure.
think because of the time of year, the most common right now is we bit off more than we could chew. The year is supposed to be done. and we're on semester 2,
Yeah.
or we're on quarter 2, and we're supposed to have 2 more to go, and we want summer. And so one of the most common is just like how that feeling behind. I'm going to put quotation marks around that. We're behind. You are homeschooling. There is no behind. Truly, honestly, right? Again, there's some stipulations in there that might make that statement not true, but overall, you're behind where your goal is at. So again, let's revisit your goal. When do you want to be done by? And what do we need to cut back, revise, remove to be at peace for the rest of your school year and to end on a good note, not just survive and get through. And so right now, we're having a lot of conversations on how do we revise our approach to topics. One of the most common is there is no way. I focused on reading, writing, and math, but there's no way we're finishing science and religion and history this year. So what do we do with that? And couple, I'm going to throw this out there now because families can use this at any point. And if you're at a point where you're like, how are we going to finish when it comes to history and literature and theology, and even science, depending on grade level? This isn't a science, not for high school, but 8th grade and below. It's okay to stop where you stop and made it where you made it. And that was your year. And what you did is what you did. And let's pick it up next year. Or we're going to call it a year. And next year, we're going to move on to the next grade level. And it's okay. So that's one of my most common conversations right now. And again, it's going to come back to what are the goals and where are you at? What grade level you're in is going to influence that too. You're an 8th grader heading into 9th grade, or you're a 9th grader trying to earn your credits. So really, those personals with your advisors, they have your notes, they know your roadmap. Well, let's figure out how do we stay on that roadmap. But there's always a way to detour and adjust. I think that's the biggest. Like Sarah was saying, that sounding board of the world is ending and everything's terrible. I promise you, it's probably not as bad as you think. I love to be the devil's advocate in conversations, not because I want to make parents upset, but because I want them to maybe hear a perspective that they haven't thought about, to confirm the direction that they're headed is the right direction, or for them to maybe come to the conclusion that I do need to pivot because getting through 12 subjects in 6 weeks is not going to be possible and is not going to end in a happy outcome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. We are recording this at the end of a school year as we're heading into summer. So that it gives a nice perspective for folks at the beginning of the next school year, like as they're kind of looking ahead, because there's a lot to tend to right at the beginning of a school year, but we want to look down the road at where do we want to be, those goals that you mentioned. And so it's an interesting time to be having this conversation as we're prepping for another year. What do you think, Sarah? What do you find is one of your most common conversations?
Bookends. Sometimes it's we have so many things left to do and we don't have enough time to do it. And sometimes it's we finished everything and my student really wants to excel and learn. And how can I move forward 1 or 2, 3, 5 grade levels, ahead? And so it's finding a balance in there. I think Rylan has hit the nail on the head with having the grace to allow yourself to finish what you can. And you know what? If you don't make it all the way through history, find a couple historical fiction books and read them over the summer. That's going to be fine. They're going to get something out of it, and it's a fun way to learn. My dad read to us every night. And he said, you don't have to listen, but you do have to sit here. And of course, we were listening even when we didn't want to.
Right.
So it's a great way to learn. But as far as my student is finished this grade level and we're only halfway through the year and they want to progress, what do I do? It's kind of a balance because you don't want to prevent a student from learning. You don't want to kind of put the spokes down and not let him continue. But also your child's mind is growing with his body, with his soul, with his intellect. And so you've got to keep the whole human being growing at the same time, and be cautious of moving too quickly with academics where maybe he could do it, but you want to do a service in the end by choosing a pace that is going to benefit him as a whole human being. So taking into account the maturity, where are his friends? How many siblings does he have? What are his goals later on that he's going to want to go and do? Because it's fine if you want to go to college at age 17, age 15, whatever. But those are adults. It's going to be a very different game to excel too quickly in academics. And so generally, sometimes, it depends on the grade level. It depends on the student, and what the subject is. But generally, I think it's kind of fun to figure out if your child is excelling, how can you find ways to keep their minds busy in those subjects without progressing too quickly through the grade levels. So if your student just loves science and they want to move on, they want to do the next thing, there are so many avenues of science that you could take. You could find any great scientist who invented something in your course, and why don't you just stop what you're doing in the course plan, stay for an extra week on that, pull that scientist, read everything you can about him. Where was his life? What did he learn? What did he contribute? And then go back in and continue on. And that way it kind of brings it full circle, because you're seeing the time period, you're seeing possibly some theology in there, you're reading a great work of literature, and you can find different ways to expand curriculum that isn't just progressing too quickly. And very often that expands the child's maturity and heart, mind, and soul at the same time, which is what we're going for.
I love that. I think that's so important, because you're right, Sarah. You can go so deep into any subject. It was again reminding me of I think when my son was in ninth grade, he was really fascinated by U.S. history, and especially the Revolutionary War. So he's just getting into it, interested. And it's like, okay, well, here's Ron Chernow's biography of Alexander Hamilton. You could read that. It's only 40 hours on audiobook, so it'll take you a little while, but you can just keep getting more richness to what you're doing without racing ahead, I guess. Again, Rylan, too, I'm completely on board in those, especially those middle school years. The important thing is, I mean, high school is a little bit more regimented. There's requirements, and you're often planning for college, so there's certain things you've got to do. But I mean, if you can read and you're still working on your math skills, then the worst thing I think that you could do is to squash the wonder and the love of learning at that stage. It would be so much better to just find a good documentary about something and spend some time watching this show together to learn about something, rather than, no, you're sitting at that table for 8 hours today and you're not getting dinner if you don't get whatever the thing is. But it's so much better to just do what you can and then work on just loving the process of learning and discovery.
Okay, that there again with the definition in our mind of we're going in, what counts as school. I mean, how long should it be taking? All that stuff. Okay, Rylan, you have another one here. Even having the right amount of classes, the workload for the classes. Say a bit about that.
Yeah, so our course plans are fantastic. They're the creme de la creme. Like, you don't have to think. All that information's there. But because of that, and this goes back to earlier in our conversation, retraining your mind that you don't have to check every single box. We give you everything in those course plans, so you don't have to create the year. But it also can be too much, because we did all of the thinking for you and all the possibilities. So even if you have just the right amount, you might see those course plans and go, there's so much. In what world do we get through all this? And the answer is you don't. We gave you options then on how to revise those course plans to fit what your student really needs, or to fit the love that they have. Like Sarah said, take a week off from one subject and dive into a particular time in history or particular person in history. And that means you're going to revise what the rest of that course plan looks like. And that is okay. And honestly, again, that K through 8, high school looks a little different, but even there's some revisions ability. But in K through 8, like, let that be your support and your guide, but know that all of that can be adjusted to help and support your student and to see that student success. In the fall, so we talked about, okay, I took off more than I could chew, and now we're trying to finish our year. In the fall, what we'll see a lot of is we have a fantastic lineup of curriculum, and everyone wants to take everything, and you'll feel like you're shortchanged if you don't take everything. The catch-22 is if you take everything by about October, we're going to be having a conversation on how to lighten the load, because now none of this is fun. The wonder is gone, the tears are at full force, and we are done. And it is October. So that's where let's talk about what's your course load. Let's get that right on. And then within that course load, let's talk about how do we want to revise. those course plans. One of my biggest pieces to chew on for families is, what subject are you doing and what's the goal of the subject? History and literature. I'll find a lot of students who they understand history, they understand the literature, and they love the content. But as soon as you put a paper in front of them to write the comprehension questions, to summarize what they've just read, they shut down. And it is the biggest fight of the day. And so now we can't get through history because we can't write the answers. And so understand that, what's the goal of that subject? It's to understand the content. What's the roadblock? The handwriting. Then let's remove it. Let's remove that. How else can we get through history? Is it mom reading it to you? This is where the family collaboration comes in. If you have a third grader and you have a middle schooler, is it the middle schooler reading to the third grader? And they're actually going to be doing history together now, because mom can't sit down and read it with them, but we need to revise how we're approaching it. And so just understanding that we as advisors are going to give you so many options and ideas. And again, no details too small, because we need to know what's going on in the home to give you some best revision options. And the other thing we won't do is, we also aren't going to throw the kitchen sink at you and say, here, pick out of this pile of 10 what you want to do. What we typically do is, here's 1, 2, 3 options that I think might be really good. Why don't you pick one, go put it into play for at least 2 weeks before you start making revisions on that stuff. Give yourself 2 to 3 weeks to try it out. If it still doesn't work, come back to me and let's try again. So we really want to work with you to find that thing that fits. We don't want to say, here's everything, best of luck, I don't have time to talk to you again. The exact opposite. Please fill me in. Please keep me in touch. Let's talk through it. You have everything you need. I can promise that. What we sometimes need is the soft tools, or is what we call them, to work through it.
Okay.
In conjunction with what she just said, I just throw a note of encouragement to families who are starting online, because very often in October they come back and they say, this isn't a good fit, we're really overwhelmed, we don't like it. And it's not the curriculum, it's the tools, because it's online, it's new. And so if they're doing an online program, I just often will tell families at the beginning, you're probably going to be overwhelmed because you're learning to work the tool that is going to help you do the subject. And it's not the subject, it's the tool. So you just have to, it's learning to ride the bike, and then getting from one town to the other is a breeze. But you have to learn how to work the tool first. So a lot of the time, the preliminary steps are kind of, it's a frustration. It's how you're doing the thing, which I think is just, it's the online version of what Rylan just said for a lot of homeschool things, and also for the homeschool, the homework part of online. But important to note that sometimes it's not always the culprit that you think it is. And we're multifaceted human beings, and sometimes we're weird people, and it's like, my shoulder itches, and then you find out it's your face. I mean, it's weird. Like we're so strange sometimes when it seems like there's a problem, and you adjust one thing somewhere else and everything all of a sudden snaps into place. So it's just sometimes being creative and trying things and giving it a chance to work, because nobody's gonna find a solution in 24 hours. It's just, you have to let it sink in a little bit.
Yeah, and with that, I would definitely say, to Sarah's point, if you are someone in 6th grade through high school and are at some point considering, like, I think we might want to do online, I highly encourage, pick one course and start that one course online this year. And then you can always add more on, because like Sarah said, learning that tool is really hard. And if all of your school is reliant on you learning that tool, it can be very frustrating. Versus, I have a couple families this year who are like, we know in high school, we're going to need multiple online classes. So I'm going to start with religion this year. And then if that tool doesn't work, or we slightly fail at it by accident, it's not reading, writing, or math. Religion we can learn regardless of if we're kind of learning that new platform. So just really helpful if you can kind of see that in the future, to ease into it, and you'll see a lot more success and be a lot happier with it.
I think those are really good points because it is like learning Schoology and Adobe Connect and all of the different things, and just even the timing, like, okay, well, somebody else is teaching this subject, but while they're still scanning the work in, they're still taking the quiz, they're still proctoring the test, there's making sure you're keeping on track. And it is kind of can be overwhelming at first, but I often hear from some of our full-time online families, by the time they're one of their children is going through high school, it's like, I actually don't do much now because they know how to look for where the due dates are, and they know how to break their work up over the week so that they've read everything before class. And so I'm here for help, but they pretty much just kind of do it on their own when they've got that. So, but that's over time. That takes time to get to that point.
That's very true. I've got a girl for accountability right now, and she's just totally on top of it. I honestly don't even know why I'm talking to her for accountability because we go through her deadlines and, yep, I got it. Yep, I got it. Yep, we're good. All A's, where she's just, sometimes it's just good to have another source of connection just to make sure everything's on par. But it's fun to see these little young adults just check off the boxes, and they know what they're doing, and they know what they would rather be doing, so they're gonna make it work so they can continue.
What a great lesson that these kids are learning to either go out in the world and work and just live on their own, or to go to college where nobody's telling you what to do every single day. And it's just like, so I see a lot of them that the ones that talk to Bonnie and I that come back to the podcast say they feel really well prepared for college. In some ways, it seems easier in college than in all of the Kolbe stuff. But yeah, they're prepared well.
Yep. So Rylan, you mentioned the fall check-in. So I'd love for you guys to talk a bit about some of the regular check-ins that you offer to families. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the structure that Kolbe offers, which is one of the things that attracted me to Kolbe. In a similar way, the advisors offer a structured series of check-ins and feedback that you provide to the families. Say a bit about that as folks are getting started, if they're new to Kolbe, what they have to look forward to.
Yeah, so the advisors, it is a structure slash not structured.
Yeah.
It was actually myself and Ashley who kind of started the idea of fall check-ins, because we realized what was happening was about October, November-ish, a lot of our new families who had enrolled were getting overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed with maybe that online platform and learning that. They were overwhelmed with the course plans. And again, there's so much in it. And what we were finding then is families were withdrawing pretty quickly. And so instead of basically sitting and waiting for someone to say, I have a problem, and whoever wants to raise their hand and say, I'm having a problem, nobody. So we became a lot more intentional about we're always accessible. First off, advisors are accessible all year round, even in the summer. We don't leave the office. But we got intentional about, let's reach out to the families in case maybe they don't know they have an advisor. Maybe they don't think they need their advisor, but then once they see our check-in emails, they're like, wait, I am having some issues and it should be a little smoother. So what we have is a fall check-in, October, November-ish. It's just an email from us. Hey, how's it going? We'd love to hear from you. Again, share those small details with us. If you want to schedule a call, here's our link to do so. If you're good to go, I like this last year, I was like, if you're good and you don't need me for anything, just send me a smiley face or a thumbs up. So I know that like you're aware that I'm here.
Yeah.
And I know that we're good. We don't have to troubleshoot anything. But it's also great reminders, because when we're in the thick of it as parents, sometimes you forget that you're like, oh yeah, I've been literally trying to call you for the last month. So fall, we'll send a check-in email. Hey, we're here. You'll get another one around grade reporting season. If you are choosing to report grades, we'll send out the directions and where to find all those directions. Because even though we do it every year, it always feels new. So we send out those directions. Hey, here's those. You'll get a spring / mid-year check-in. And so you'll get one in about January, February. Hey, enrollment's happening. Crazy. It's hard to think the school year is already going to be wrapping up. But we're here. Let's talk about course selection. January, February, fantastic time if you have an 8th grader heading into high school to start, what's my high school roadmap look like? Registration opens in March. So that way by March, you guys are locked, loaded, ready to go. If you're doing online classes, you get the spots you want. And then we'll actually have one more going out end of school year. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll actually have one more. If you haven't reported grades, here's how to do it. If we haven't re-enrolled yet and you're thinking you should, like, we're here for you. They're really just check-ins just to remind you we're here. Let us know what you need. If you don't need us, that's okay too. Just let us know that you're good, alive, everything's moving forwards as you would hope.
I think that's fantastic. When I see those arrive, I'm like, oh yes. And then I get a draft reply going in my mind, and sometimes I send it and sometimes I don't. But just to have for it to appear for me like I am here, it's a gift. So yeah. Sarah, anything add to that on the check-ins or things like that?
I think she covered most of it. I mean,
Okay.
I'm one of those people who says, I've had moms say this, oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you. And I'm on
Yeah.
the phone. Yeah, I just had a quick question. Yeah, I did too. So it's nice to be able to sometimes the phone call is just so much easier and quicker. You can just get it all out of the way in once. Nobody's playing email tag, you know. And then also on auto replies, I know the office is closed sometimes for Easter, for Christmas, and so a little skill I learned from Rylan and other advisors is the auto replies. I'll try to put in there the links that you need and anticipate most common questions. Like where do I go for grading? It's the end. Oh no, Christmas break. I'm late. I'm late. And so I'll try to put in there some links, and I'm never gonna get them all, but at least I'm trying to give you what you need because I know that I really appreciate having what I need. So
Yes.
it makes the world go round.
Yep. All right. Well, at this point, as you can see, that advisors are here to help, and they're a great gift. Any final thoughts or takeaways? Sarah, I'm going to start with you. Any final thoughts or takeaways at this point in our conversation? Any recommendations you have or resources? Anything along those lines?
Just say congratulations on choosing this homeschool road because I really think that it's such a benefit to the moms. It's a benefit to the world. I've shared this with several moms that I got to hear the stepson of C.S. Lewis speak. And he said that homeschooling is the best form of education by far and always has been. He said schools are for fishes. Children shouldn't be allowed anywhere near them. And it just made me feel so good because if the stepson of Narnia says that, you know, we're onto something good. And sometimes it looks messy, sometimes it feels overwhelming, but that's my whole job is to hear why it feels messy and overwhelming. So I just want to commend everybody who's homeschooling. You're doing a great job. And just because it seems a little messy, don't worry about it. It'll work itself out. You'll turn the tapestry around. It'll be beautiful. It'll be great. Pay no attention to the knots. So keep on going. And if you have questions, holler.
Beautiful. I love that tapestry image. What about you, Rylan?
You know, I don't think I can say anything better than what Sarah said.
Yeah.
Like she nailed it. We're here. Let us know. It is what we do. And it truly is. It's going to be okay. There are answers to all of it. Sometimes we just need to talk it out loud, figure it out. Let us give you some other perspectives. And it's gonna be good.
I really love that tapestry image as well, Sarah. I mean, I hadn't thought about that, but like in the homeschooling, all the messiness back here, you as an advisor can kind of be on the other side saying, nope, looking great. Just keep it up, you know?
All right. Well, this has been a fabulous conversation. I know it'll be a huge help to our listeners and our Kolbe families, both those who've been with us for a while and those who are just getting started. We would love to hear from our listeners, any questions that you have that have come up in the course of this conversation that you would love to hear our advisors speak to. So send those to us, podcast@kolbe.org. Of course, we will include in our show notes links to how to find out more about the family advising services that Kolbe offers, as well as some relevant Kolbecast conversations that we've had. We'll also include a link to the Help Center on the Kolbe website, which has just a wealth of information there on all sorts of topics relating to homeschool day-to-day and long view. Ladies, are there any particular articles relevant to this conversation and the time of year with families thinking about starting a new school year that you'd recommend?
Planning your school day. That's going to be the top conversation of August and September.
Great.
Also, the fillable high school graduation tracker.
And the graduation.
And the math and science progression. Everybody's always like, what do I take? That's a good one too.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, those would be great summer ones.
So I look forward to having you all back to visit with us on future episodes. And thanks for spending this time with us, Rylan and Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, Holy Saints and Angels, pray for us. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam.